President Buhari chastises the nation's elites for failing to sustain the legacies of Nigeria's founding fathers.
More testimonies as House of Representatives continues investigation into alleged killings during elections in Rivers.
Federal government implements strategy to guarantee restoration of lasting peace in Zamfara.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall take a deeper look at the national policy on cotton, textile, and garments, plus current measures to revive the sector.
Another ray of hope is shining on the cotton and textile sector in Nigeria with the federal government's new intervention programs to revitalize the cotton, textile, and garment industries to something close to its former glory.
Well, it turns out that previous efforts aimed at reviving that sector haven't been quite successful. And this, of course, has kept the industry in limbo as the country has, as it were, become a net importer of garments and textiles instead of being an exporter that she used to be before the oil boom years of the 1970s.
Absolutely, Kingsley. Nigeria was Africa's largest textile hub in the 1970s and 1980s, with over 180 textile mills in operation, with about 500,000 employees. The industry at the time was supported by the production of cotton by over 600,000 farmers from across 30 of Nigeria's 36 states, and they were kept busy feeding textile companies such as Asaba Textile Mills, Kanu Textiles, United Textiles in Kaduna, Swane Mills, Supertex Limited, to mention a few of the 140 textile companies operating in those days.
The sad story, of course, is that a number of these textile companies that my colleague Kirian has just listed, including Asaba Tex, which was based in Asaba, and Edo Textile Mills, which is based in Benin, have closed down. And of course, their workers have also lost their jobs. And the reason, of course, is not far-fetched on account of what happened in the 1980s and what continues to happen today. So much so that very few factories are left in operation in the CTG, that's the cotton, textile, and garment industry. And those, of course, that are in operation are said to be operating well below 20% of their installed capacity.
Well, I believe these are some of the reasons the governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, unveiled measures to help the sector develop, placing restriction on access to forex by importers of textiles and other clothing materials into the country. The policy says all importers of textile and, of course, the textile materials would not be able to purchase foreign exchange from banks, bureau de change, and other operators in the official foreign exchange market.
As you very well know, Kirian, even most small businesses in Nigeria complain about the problem of unstable power supply. But the CBN, of course, has offered to support the creation of the textile production centers in some designated areas in the country where access to electricity would be guaranteed. Now, there will also be support for local cotton growers as part of government's Anchor Borrowers Program to enable such growers meet the needs of the revitalized textile industry in the country.
Well, these measures sound optimistic, Kingsley, optimistic enough to resuscitate the industry and the efforts at creating jobs for Nigerians through the cotton, textile, and garment industries. And experts say these measures should save the country the over $4 billion spent annually on imported textiles and ready-made clothing into the country.
But one question to ask is how will the latest move help revitalize the sector? And is this part of the economic diversification agenda? And how, therefore, should all stakeholders contribute to ensure that it succeeds? And in particular, what lessons are there to learn from previous efforts to revitalize the cotton, textile, and garment industries? What are the impediments that could, of course, hamstring current efforts, particularly considering the targets that were set in the 2015 National Policy on Cotton, Textile, and Garments? And how much of this renewed effort will the government have to cough out in terms of expenditure?
Vacancy, our panel of experts will be seated with us in the course of the program to provide answers to these and even more. And it is on that note that we officially welcome you to this Tuesday's edition of GMN as Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Kirian Umaya.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian and also welcoming you to today's edition of the program. As always, we are broadcasting live from Nigeria's capital city, and that's Abuja. And as part of the complimentary segments of Good Morning Nigeria, we shall have newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's take the highlights of the morning news, and here is Ruth Aguele. Hi, Ruth. Good morning.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley, and thank you for joining us on AM News. President Muhammadu Buhari has again lashed out at the nation's elites for failing to sustain the legacies of Nigeria's founding fathers as regards the provision of quality education at the basic level towards guaranteeing sustainable future for the younger ones. This was while hosting members of the Federal Executive Council service chiefs and heads of government departments and agencies to the breaking of Ramadan fast.
If you check your localities, the enrollment or the attendance improved because a lot of children can get at least one good meal a day.
Former Head of State General Yakubu Gowon says the Buhari administration is on track towards meeting genuine national aspirations for sustainable future of the country. General Gowon was speaking to newsmen shortly after an audience with the Nigerian leader. The president also granted separate audience to 4 governors from the various geopolitical zones of the country.
And of course, Nigerians want development. And of course, this is what the government, I believe, is doing. Now, I did mine in those days, and I think the present government is doing also the best it could, ensuring agriculture, that we can be able to feed ourselves, and also to help other countries. These were some of the ideas that we had during our time. And I think they are making the necessary effort. Should we not say good luck to Mr. President?
And Minister of Transportation Chibuike Rotimi Amechi has directed the Nigerian Railway Corporation to carry out a fast audit of property to be affected by the construction of Apapa section of the Lagos-Ibadan Rail project. The minister gave the directive on an inspection tour and also noted that challenges on the Lagos corridor is delaying the speedy completion of work, unlike the Ibadan axis.
June, construction from Iju to Apapa will commence at a faster speed.
And away from infrastructure to politics, the All Progressives Congress has cautioned party members, supporters and the general public on fake news going around on social media about the upcoming Kogi and Bayelsa state governorship elections. The party, in a statement by the National Publicity Secretary Lanre Issa Onilu, said it had initially ignored the fake statements, but it became necessary to debunk them as they are increasingly gaining traction, particularly such statement being ascribed to the party and the national chairman, Comrade Adams Oshomole. The statement added that, in line with President Muhammadu Buhari's vision for the country and APC's continued efforts towards deepening participatory democracy, the National Working Committee will abide by the rules at every stage of the process of primary elections. Consequently, the party will provide a level playing field to all aspirants. And on security, in continuation of investigations by the House of Representatives on alleged killings by security personnel during elections in Rivers State, the General Officer commanding 6th Division and the Police State Commissioner has testified on the matter.
We did exercise Python Dance 3 to usher in safe conduct. What was the aim? Is to mop up illegal arms, and we of course did it. We saw arms, we saw ammunition, we saw uniforms, which are all seized and handed over to the police.
Police being the lead agency in terms of policy in the electoral process, they're providing the support service that is required. In terms of deployments, police deploy to the polling units, but the military is asked to deploy outside, not within the polling units.
Those who feel hurt will be pacified that they have received justice.
Minister of Interior Abdurrahman Dambazao says the federal government is currently implementing a decisive strategy that would guarantee the restoration of a lasting peace in Zamfara and other states bedeviled by insecurity. The minister made the remarks when he paid an assessment visit to Anka and Shinkafi local government areas of Zamfara state.
Is out to deal with the situation accordingly. So we know what the problems are. We know what the challenges are. We've mapped out strategies, but we need to discuss with stakeholders so that everybody will come on board in order to find lasting solutions to.
Nasarawa state government is raising the bar in efforts to curb insecurity in the state. In this regard, the state government has installed surveillance cameras on major streets to track miscreants. The pilot scheme of the project was flagged off in Cairo.
At the time people start to appreciate it, we will then take it to local government headquarters.
And on judiciary, Justice Okon Agbang of the Federal High Court has adjourned the trial of the former National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, Olisa Metu, to the 14th of this month to enable the defense file and serve all the documents it intends to tender before the court as evidence. The defense attempted to tender a document which Metu described as the financial account of the 400 million naira he received for the special national assignment. He alleged that the original copy of the document has been submitted to the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, since 20th of January 2015. Prosecution counsel objected to the admittance of the document on the grounds that it is an ambush by the defense and the copy tendered before the court is not satisfactory, which ought to have been, since the defense claimed it has been submitted to the former president and now a public document. In another development, same Justice Okon Agbang has granted Senator Godswill Akpabio leave to personally challenge the suit filed by Legal Defense and Assistance Project, which seeks to remove Akpabio and 53 other senators from office for alleged defection from one political party to another. The defendants, which included the Senate President and Speaker House of Representatives, urged the court to dismiss the suit on grounds that the plaintiff lacks the locus standi to institute the case. Ruling on Akpabio application barely 3 days to judgment, the judge agreed with counsel Sunday Ahmed that the suit is not a class action. Hence, the applicant is entitled to be heard before judgment is delivered. And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kinsley after this break. Thank you for staying with us.
In today's world, it's tough being a woman. But thanks to So Clean, Nigeria's #1 detergent with stain magnet technology, doing washing is a whole lot faster and smarter too. Only So Clean has stain magnet technology with an advanced enzyme formula that pulls out even the toughest trapped dirt, just like powerful magnets. No wonder Nigerians love So Clean. So Clean, for a faster, brighter, cleaner wash.
NTA Television College Jos announces admissions into 2-year diploma programs in film and television production, television engineering, and broadcast journalism. The sale of forms will commence on the 13th of May and run through 30th July 2019. Admission forms can be obtained from all marketing offices, NTA state capital stations, zonal centers, or at the office of the academic secretary, NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos.
On payment of a non-refundable fee of 7,500 naira in bank draft in favor of NTA TV College. Applicants can also obtain the forms through the NTA TV College portal at www.ntatvc.edu.nj.
Applicants are required to possess 5 credits in GCE or SSCE in relevant areas of study in not more than 2 sittings, including English and mathematics. All properly completed forms attached with photocopies of credentials must be submitted on or before 30th July 2019. For further inquiries, please visit our website at ntatvc.com or call 0803 3144 383.
NTA TV College, training you to be the best you want to be.
Registrar Announcer.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The program is Good Morning Nigeria. Now let's go to business. Federal government assures Nigerians that the proposed reform in the health sector is not an outright privatization, but a step to transforming the institutional frameworks of the sector. Let's now join Kunle Adeye for details.
Minister of Health, Professor Isaac Adewale, says with the reforms, private sector participation and funding of the sector are set to increase with collaboration of all key stakeholders. Director General of the Bureau of Public Enterprises, Alex Oko, on his part explained that the reform will facilitate availability, accessibility, quality and affordability of health services, which will increase private sector participation and funding, thereby reducing medical tourism among Nigerians. He said a holistic and comprehensive reform of the sector is required to create the right environment to attract funding. And to the equity markets, where markets on Monday closed on a negative note as Nigeria's Stock Exchange All-Share Index depreciated by 1.26% to close at 28,484.44 basis points. Market capitalization dropped to 10.371 trillion naira as 214.6 million shares exchanged hands by investors valued at 2.7 billion naira in 3,856 deals. And let's take a look at the graphic representation of Monday's trading on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Meanwhile, some macroeconomic indicators and other external factors indicate that the days of bears on the stock market are fast coming to an end. Professor of Capital Market Uche Uwaleke, who gave the indication, says increase in minimum wage, increase in oil price, and stability in foreign exchange would impact market positively and aid recovery.
But going forward, I want to expect that the market will rebound. That's my prediction. The market is likely to rebound from the third quarter of the year, by which time some of these, if you like, uncertainties that have continued to keep investors on the fence, we'll have a melted away.
With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
All right, thank you very much, Kunle Adeyeye, for the business package. Next for us on the program is a review of the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Bayo Atoyabi, our newspaper reviewer, is here with us. Bayo, good morning.
Thank you, Kilian. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper, let's begin, of course, by taking a look at the photographs from the front page that's spread across the 5 columns on the front page, almost half of the front page itself. Zainab returns after 4 months in Saudi detention. You have the caption there. It says, Zainab Aliyu, so the middle, the released Nigerian student who was detained over illegal drug allegations in Saudi Arabia and found innocent during her arrival at the Malam Aminu Kano International Airport yesterday. Now, on the right, you can see that's on the right side, is Ibrahim Abubakar, who was also arrested over the same offense, but released after he was found innocent. So Zainab is back after 4 months in Saudi detention, along with Ibrahim Abubakar. That's the happy news from Kano. Now, the lead story of Daily Trust says speakership. Lawmakers plot to secretly amend House rules. And below, above that, below the nameplate, you have the headline. It says, major events for Buhari's inauguration hold June 12, federal government says. Major events for Buhari's inauguration hold June 12, federal government says, and details can be found on page 17. Now, let's return to the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. It says, Buhari meets Gawan and 5 governors and Emefiele at the villa. That's page 7. El-Rufai, that's the kicker. No apologies for my godfather comment. Page 13. MTN to list on NSC, that's Nigerian Stock Exchange, on Thursday, page 17 as well.
All right, let's go to Blueprint newspaper for this Tuesday morning. Blueprint, below the nameplate, and of course on the right-hand side of the nameplate too, there are stories there. But directly below the nameplate, we have amid workers' protest, Ngige inaugurates NSITF board in Villa today. It's on page 6, and of course on the right-hand side of the nameplate of the Blueprint, we have a Dangote refinery awards $368 million contracts to local contractors. It's on page 18. Now, federal government rakes in $20 billion foreign investment. Page 34 is where you get the details of that story. And I am a wiser politician now, Ambude. It's on page 16. Now, the lead story on the Blueprint, INEC to senior lawyers, that's the key. Now, don't send juniors to process pool documents. With 2 riders, expresses commitment to court orders. They are qualified for representation, says SAN. All right, that's the lead story. And now to the bottom of the Blueprint newspaper, that's after the photograph of the president and, of course, the former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon. We have presidential inauguration will be low-key, says federal government. Holds fanfare June 12, as on page 15. And now, Modibo, stop wasting funds on alleged 2.5 billion naira fraud, ICPC told, is on page 5. Now, man kills father, sets corpse ablaze in Anambra, on page 28. And now, early completion of second Niger Bridge are priority, says Julius Berger. That's the company handling that project. Details on page 16. As recently read in the Other newspapers say, no apologies over Lagos godfatherism comment, says El-Rufai. That's the governor of Kaduna State, on page 7 of the Blueprint newspaper. Now let's go to Bayo for some analysis. Bayo.
Thank you, Kirian. Let's start with the human interest. Zainab Ali, I'm sure you remember him now, the lady who traveled for lesser hajj to Mecca and had her baggage padded with drugs by a syndicate of 6 men and 1 woman. She was held since December, and with the intervention of the federal government, the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs, her innocence was established, and she returned to the country yesterday. There was a tearful reunion with members of the family. However, another second person, Abubakar Ibrahim, who was also convicted pending trial under the same circumstance, was also released. Other running stories: the board of the Nigeria Social Investment Trust Fund has been inaugurated. At the inauguration yesterday, the Minister of Labour and Employment said the appointment of a financial expert as chairman of the NSITF is to help unmask those indicted by an administrative panel for mismanaging 46 billion. The minister revealed that a sum of about 62 billion accumulated between the year 2012 and 2015 could not be accounted for. Consequently, 37 luxury houses had been under forfeiture by the federal government, and some of the directors who EFCC is trailing have in fact returned some of the monies they have taken. He says that 48 billion of the 62 contributed by private sector members must be accounted for. Meanwhile, Labour also yesterday staged a demonstration and moved from Labour House up to the central area, and they said they are protesting alleged attack on their members by thugs while picketing the minister's residence. Labour claimed that some of its members were hospitalized, and the hospital said that yes, 7 persons were treated and discharged, and 2 others were under observation and will later on discharged. Talking about custom, you had some time ago that the custom was about to recruit 3,200 vacancies, and guess what? So far, they have succeeded in shortlisting 524,315. If you are to do some statistics, it means for every single position, you will have 164 persons competing. And guess what? Actually, the number of applicants they received were 828,332. It means that 304,018 did not get shortlisted. It tells you how competitive it is.
Competitive. And again, there are some findings with respect to the issue of employment in this country. Some who have jobs want better jobs. So you find out that, when you have about 100 applicants, about 40% of them have jobs. And they want to exactly get a better pay. But let's take it back to the issue of Zainab.
Yes.
That just returned. Kingsley as well. I want to contribute to this. I'm just thinking of the kind of networking that was established at the Kano Airport, International Airport, where somebody's bag would be padded, unknown to that person. And one wonders how those who did that will recover assuming Zainab was not caught. How will they get the substance back in Saudi Arabia? What is the connection? What is the connection?
Well, you're putting me on the spot as if I know how they
operate. That's why I brought both of you. So let's look at it, because I'm just wondering, how?
You see, these are the ones that are very discreet because it is padded with drugs, something that is illegal. In fact, somebody told me there are instances that people who have excess baggage will come and approach you. You have less baggage. This is my baggage. Can I add it to your own? When I get there, I'll collect it. And sometimes people offer to help. Those are baggages that are safe. But these ones, because it is a syndicate, they have been doing, and only God knows how many people have fallen victims elsewhere, either in Saudi Arabia, Far East, Malaysia, or somewhere else, and probably they were innocent of that crime. But that pointer means that there has to be extra vigilance at all our airports. Yes.
All right. Let's return to the papers. We're taking a look now at Vanguard. We haven't had Vanguard for a long while. Vanguard newspaper. Now, above the nameplate, it's quite busy with some headlines, but we'll take some of those headlines there. Vanguard. It says, New Emirates, Junaid Mohammed and Balarabe Musa back Ganduje. That's on page 13. I made mistakes in my first tenure, or term, that's Governor of Benue. And House Committee asks anti-graft agencies to recover 72.5 billion naira and $1.8 million from MDAs. That story is on page 8. TSA transactions hit 30 trillion naira as 3 countries copy Nigeria's model. That story is in greater detail on page 19. Lead story says, federal government shuns Kokori and Labour when it inaugurates NSITF board. With 2 riders, we will expose Ngige to international ridicule. NLC president. I haven't been informed about Michael Imodu Institute's appointment, Kokori. And you can see the photographs there on the front page of the Vanguard. One of the photographs says members of the NLC protesting at the Federal Secretariat in Abuja over Dr. Ngige's face-off with the NLC yesterday. One other headline there says corruption allegation. You can see that there, corruption allegation. Court declines to order EFCC to try Oshomole. Details of that story can be found on page 8. So, Bayo, those are the...
There's also 2 stories that are of interest here. South Governors Forum says that President Muhammadu Buhari means well for the economy, and he shows his appreciation, particularly when competence on the job and hard work is exhibited. Governor Serake Dixon of Bayelsa, who is chairman of the South Governors Forum, made the observation over the 2nd term appointment of the governor of the central bank. He said it is important when the right thing is done, it is appreciated irrespective of the political divide. Similarly, Vanguard also reports that Governor Willie Obiano of Anambra State visited the president. He also lobbied for federal appointment for indigenes of Anambra State. He also congratulated the president on his deserved victory at the last vote. Talking about victory, the Minister of Information says that the inauguration of the 2nd term of Mr. President will be low-keyed. He however explained that this decision was taken by the Federal Executive Council and elaborate inauguration will be held on June 12. This is because this year, June 12 has coincided with an election year, and in the words of the minister, the celebration for inauguration of the advancement of democracy will be most appropriate on that day. Meanwhile, President yesterday hosted guests at a Sunset Ramadan breakfast, otherwise known as Iftar. Among those in attendance were the Vice President, members of the Federal Executive Council, the Governor of the Central Bank, as well as some of heads of parastatals of federal agencies. There is an indication about the causes of the challenge of the national grid. You recall that the national grid was said to have collapsed twice last week, and the managing director of the transmission company of Nigeria, Usman Mohammed, says that there are 4 items that are actually responsible. One of them is that the grid undergoing expansion requires 4 items. One, it needs an investment in lines and submission, particularly a facility that is called N1 supply. And he illustrates that by saying that we recall that there was a fire at Apple power transformer station, but by evening of that day, they were able to restore power. And that is because they had that N1 facility. And that kind of facility is required around the whole of the country. Secondly, he says investment up to about 1.6 billion that is required are still trickling in, they are not in there. And then spinning reserve, which is also about 10% to help synchronize stability, is also scarcely available. He also said we need a lot of frequency control and another facility called SCADA, which he says if we have all this, then the challenge will be reduced. However, he says most of the power outage we are having and the low power is as a result of what he described as overvoltage by distribution companies. He says, and they are on the increase during the rainy season. So, what does that mean? At the outset of the rainy season, since we don't have the appropriate facilities, we are going to witness a lot more of those challenges.
Yeah.
All right, Bayo. Just before we take off, there's a story on page 30 of the Daily Trust newspaper, and of course it's called the Printer's Devil usually. But this story is coming from Australia. If we can have that photograph, it says yes, Australia's central bank takes responsibility for spelling error on 46 million banknotes. You can see it encircled there is a spelling of responsibility. Unfortunately, the last I is missing. And it is said that there are 46 million of such banknotes already in circulation, and they were released in October last year. And that Australia's high-tech polymer notes are amongst the most difficult in the world to counterfeit due to their extraordinary level of detail. So we have this typo there. It's a printer's devil.
On the currency.
On the currency. We had a similar incident about 20 years or so ago when one of our new currency notes was launched. The Zuma Rock, if you recall, Zuma Rock, it was referred to as being located in the Federal Capital Territory instead of in Suleja,
which is Niger State.
Yes.
Well, these are human errors. I mean, you can't do without that.
Yeah, but I'm sure, Kirian, this is 150 Australian banknote is equivalent to 12,760 naira. You won't mind whether the error is there or not. So.
That's an expenditure.
Okay, so it's on that note, we'd like to thank Bayo Atoyebe and Mr. Parivia, who's been with us this morning.
Thank you,
we'll
too.
See you again tomorrow. Bayo, thank you. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be talking cotton, textile, and garment and what's been done to revive the sector.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
Back for a minute to the old school. Everybody love me when I do what I do, cause when I come through I got the power of cool. The power of cool.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, now, and to set us in the right mood for our conversation this morning, which is on cotton and the garment industry, here is a background report as put together by Aisha Ubali.
The cotton, textile and garment industry was and can still be the highest employer of labor and major contributor to the nation's gross domestic product, GDP. But over the years, the subsector has struggled to survive, and the comatose state of the subsector became a source of concern to stakeholders. Various administrations have made efforts to see how it can revitalize the cotton and garment industry. But despite several attempts to come up with a working and successful policy framework to revamp the sector and increase production, this has not yielded any result. One of these attempts is the introduction of 100 billion naira cotton, textile and garment revival fund managed by the Bank of Industry in 2010, with the aim of turning around the fortunes of the textile industry. Another government effort was the National Cotton, Textile and Garment Enterprise policy by the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, launched in 2015 to stimulate the textile industry, but just like the Revival Fund, it also failed to revive the sector. There have been concerns about why, despite these laudable and robust policies, Nigeria is yet to meet any of the targets set in the policies. The latest measures by the Central Bank of Nigeria is expected to help boost local textile industries aimed at developing the industry to a level where there will be an enabling environment for investors. With the close down of many factories and many laid off their jobs, observers suggest the need for an articulated new policy to revamp the sector through interventions that will tackle issues of smuggling, infrastructure, boost local productions, as well as promoting patronage, especially by schools, paramilitary organizations, and the military. With the implementation committee already inaugurated, it is necessary to hit the ground running to see to the implementation of these policies, which will look holistically at the value chain. However, some of the pertinent questions are: what guarantee will this renewed measure be in the development and growth of the cotton and textile industry? What impact will the revitalization of the industries have on the government diversification policy? What progress has been made so far? These questions and more will be answered shortly by guests on the program this morning.
All right, thank you very much, Aisha Bale, for that background. Now we have with us guests in the studios to discuss this issue further. First, let's welcome Mudashiru Olaiton. He's Director of Development Finance at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Mr. Olaiton, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, also here with us in the studios is Comrade Issa Aremo. Comrade Issa Aremo is General Secretary, National Union of Garment and Textile Workers of Nigeria. Comrade, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Kinsley, good morning, and good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, also here in the studios is the President of the Cotton Farmers Association of Nigeria, Anibe Achimogo. Achimogo, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, sir.
On Good Morning Nigeria. Joining us via Skype from Kano, we would like to welcome Malam Seidu Datijo Adahama. He's a textile manufacturer. Alhaji Adhama, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. Of course, the CBN intervention has brought the cotton and garment industry into the front burner. But let's just go a little bit back, because successive administrations in Nigeria have been accused of a lack of political will to formulate policies directed at industrial growth. Some say that the declining textile industry reflects internal challenges and failure to provide supportive policy measures to critical infrastructure for the sector. Now, let me begin with Mudashiru Olaito, Director of Development Finance in the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, what are Nigerians hoping for in terms of changing the narrative now that the Central Bank of Nigeria is intervening in this sector?
Thank you very much. The new initiative by the Central Bank of Nigeria is actually looking at the cotton, textile, and garment along the value chain. The previous attempts have been to look at them in silos. But what we realize over time is that the issues of the CTG goes beyond only financing. You need to also look at what are the allied or what are the supportive requirements to have a very vibrant CTG. For us, what the bank has tried to do is that first, the most important thing is even the seed for production. Because if you look at what we currently have, the seeds we have in Nigeria currently produces about 1.5 metric tons. But the central bank have now introduced improved seedlings, which now can give about 4 metric tons per hectare. And the requirement in Nigeria really is about 700,000 metric tons, but what we currently produce is 80,000. So we are hoping that with 100,000 farmers being cultivating about 200,000 hectares and also producing at the rate of 4 tons per hectare, ordinarily we expect to have about 800,000 metric tons, which is even be more than the requirement. In addition to that, we're also now looking at what are the other value chain actors like the ginneries, the spinners, and also the textile industry itself. So we are addressing everything holistically. We are looking at what are the gaps, what are the challenges, so that every actor in the value chain is given the required support so that we can now see a seamless flow of activities, investments, and on the long run, we can now see that we are hoping that to a certain extent, we'll be able to even start exporting to the West African coast. So with these efforts, now we are working with the ginneries, we are working with the spinners, so that, and we are working with the textile industry, so that along the line, we can now be able to see that there won't be any gaps. And we are hoping that with this process, it will be much more impactful than the previous attempts.
All right, Mr. Mudashiru Olaito, thanks a lot for what you have said. Incidentally, I mean, we have textile and garment worker in our midst. We have a cotton farmer. We also have a textile manufacturer, Adama, who's joining us via Skype, is chairman of Adama Textile and Garment Industries. The CBN is already intervening, but let's have a sense of the sector in which the CBN is making this intervention. And so my first question goes to Comrade Issa Aremu. Comrade, what is it that we are dealing with?
Well, thank you so much, Kingsley. I think from your background commentary, there was once in Nigeria in which we had abundance of cotton production. And then the entire value chain was well acknowledged. We have textile production, close to almost about around 82 textile mills. And there are smaller mills too, as at early 80s, we had close to almost about 200 textile mills in the country, employing hundreds of thousands of jobs. And if you talk of indirect jobs, we're talking of millions of jobs created, even more than federal government and state government. In fact, the entire history of British colonialism, it was all about cotton production. Nigeria was producing cotton, with the British, were exporting to Manchester, to produce textile. And on the eve of independence, the founding fathers said, no, let's add value to our cotton. And that's what led to the first textile mill in 1957, KTL. It was a period of regional competition, very healthy one. It started from the north. Then Awolowo started NTM. Then Zig started Aba Textile Mill, of course, Aba Textile Mill, And before you knew it, we were the second to third largest producer of textile in the entire Africa. So The narrative before has been that of production of cotton. In fact, today people talk of North. We define North in terms of poverty. It used to be, prosperity destination, and cotton was at the root of it. In fact, the bales of cotton in Kano produced that time could cover the entire city of Kano for Samfara, and we're highly blessed, both long staple, short staple, we were having abundance of production. But it's sad today that most of these factories have closed down. And that the root cause of this, of course, a lot of issues are there: energy crisis, lack of electricity, smuggling, and all the financing crisis, but also work prices for cotton production. So it's very remarkable and commendable that CBN is not trying to change the narrative of the industry from that of complaint to get the job done. We should stop agonizing. We need to organize. And I want to use this medium to first commend the federal government, because we have seen a lot of activism under President Buhari, on the need to revive textile mill. The two ministers are doing a good job, but the most interesting thing now is the CBN through development financing. And we are quite excited that Godwin Emefiele has been nominated, represented for reappointment, and I hope the National Assembly will give effect to that, because we've seen not just talking about doing it. I was impressed. It was in Katsina. The governor was there to launch the presentation of new cotton seeds to farmers. So what I'm saying here is that what we're talking about is return of jobs, massive jobs that have been lost in this industry. I used to know when I joined the textile union in the late 80s. It's interesting. The mills used to call on the union. We became like labor exchange center, call on us to bring to get boys to come and work, and get to work in the factory. Yeah. And the entire Kakuri zone, Nasarawa, huge textile community, Bompai in Kano, the entire Lupeju, down to my two axes used to be textile, and at the root of this is cotton production. So what I'm saying here is that I think it's better late than never that we are changing this narrative. And as Mudashiru said, all the agencies have to work together. It's not just one issue. Cotton is critical, but we need to talk of all the other value chains. And even very interesting, we are just discussing outside now, security is also a challenge now. We have close to 25 states, of 24 states that produce cotton, have the capacity to produce cotton, because that's the primary raw material. And interestingly, some of the states are facing challenge of banditry, which affect cotton farmers. So I think all the agencies have to come together to bring back this industry.
All right, thank you for that historical perspective in your opening, comments. And still, along that same line, something happened that actually, brought down the textile industry. There are blames of maladministration, policy inconsistency on the part of government, non-provision of needed infrastructure and unconducive environment that could not attract investment in the sector. So lead us into what actually happened, because if the central bank intervenes as it's doing at the moment, and we get back to where we were, and we did not take care of the factors that led to, the downfall of the sector, we may not be able to, sustain what the central bank is trying to do. So let us know what happened that led to the total collapse of this sector.
Yeah, thank you, Kiran. I think maybe we should, in looking at what happened that led to the collapse, we should also look at what happened that led to the growth of the industry. I strongly believe that private sector is the engine of growth. But for this engine to really perform, the state must oil it. So we need both the private sector and the state partnership together. And that's what led to the growth of industry in those days. What I mean here is that, as you said, clear, consistent industrial policy. The whole vision was that instead of exporting raw cotton, let's add value to them. And then protect your industry, and we had good protective measures in place in those days. But uncritically, in early 90s, we went to liberalize our market, allow for us of importation of goods. We went to WTO, even though we had nothing to... World Trade Organization is meant for trading nations. But you that You could even produce for domestic market. You don't talk of exporting. You join uncritically, lower the tariff, and then we legitimize the all stuff import the country. Fabrics were imported here. I mean, we produce all sorts of fabrics in this country. Even, you know, there was a time in the 70s we buy importation of lace to the country because we had enough self-sufficiency. But policy inconsistency, it was reversed. That's under the military government of Abuja. And then before you knew it, from even legal imports, we moved to massive smuggling. You know, and of course, smuggle goods, they don't pay duties, they can undersell us, and then they kill our factory. Then also the support that used to be given to farmers was also withdrawn under the idea of liberalization. You know, we used to have a cotton board that used to regulate the standard supply and the support for this thing. Of course, energy crisis came in later. You know very well, you can't have industrialization without electrification. Before we had uninterrupted power supply, dedicated energy to industries in all the industrial states. But later on, we had the collapse. Now we're having energy poverty such that industry rely on generators. And that also had to the cost of production, which doesn't make us to be competitive. So what I'm saying here is that it worked before when we had correct partnership with the state together with the private sector, which attracted massive foreign investment in the sector. And I'm happy that that's what we're bringing back now. And at the center of this is development financing by CBN. In the case of cotton, we've seen it, that it's really, really possible. That you just don't assume that farmers can be left to the vagaries of borrowing money at this double-digit interest rate. I'm happy CBN is coming with single-digit interest rate for farmers under the anchor borrowers financing. And that's what it used to be in the 70s, in the 60s. We had single-digit interest rate under the old NIDB, which became Bank of Industry. This really helped, you know, promote it. So I'm happy we're back to that. In fact, China financing textile is more of zero interest rate because they know it's labor intensive. It will employ a lot of people. Then you also know that you must also give them seedlings. Very, very important, you know, because the yield is so low. I mean, I just listened to what Mudashiru said now. I mean, it's good if we can move from less than 1 ton for hectare to almost about 4 tons. That would be remarkable. It's the quality of seedling that we're going to provide. So, in summary, what I'm saying is I think we need the partnership between the state and the private sector to work together in a way that is going to happen. That's to apply also to smuggling. We need to partner with customs. They have to be on duty to have proper charges, especially I'm talking of the produced fabrics, because that's the other end of the value chains. And make sure we stop smuggling. Extremely, very, very critical.
Comrade Sarah,
it's what has been done and it's what can be done again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll return to those points you've just ticked off, particularly how to combat smuggling and then ensure that the cooperation between the state and the private sector is beneficial. Let's bring in Anibe Achimugo, who is the president of the Cotton Farmers Association of Nigeria. Yours is a primary production point for the cotton, textile, and garment industry. Where are you, and how much of a feel are you getting from what the CBN is doing?
Okay, thank you very much. First and foremost, just to correct that I'm the president of the National Cotton Association of Nigeria.
Is it different from cotton farmers?
It is different. Well, I mean, if you say cotton farmers and national cotton, is different because National Cotton Association actually represents the CTG sector. Yeah. So we have membership of the textile companies and the ginners and the garment people.
So what's your correct?
So what's your correct affiliation now?
National Cotton Association of Nigeria.
National Cotton Association of Nigeria. You are the president.
I'm the president. Yes.
All right, so give us a fit. Just take the question along with what you're saying.
Well, yeah, first and foremost, I mean, we are very grateful to the Central Bank of Nigeria for the intervention that they have offered us. And you have asked if we are feeling what they are doing or the policy, or I call it a strategic intervention. And yes, we are, because we started this journey just January of this year. To be fully adopted under the Anchor Borrowers program, which for me is the best program for agricultural development of Nigeria. So we've started that journey, and it culminated into the flag off in Katsina on the 6th of May, where the CBN governor was present, the governor of Kano State, Katsina State government. They all contributed also to make the ceremony a success. And yes, and we had more than 300 farmers there, though they wanted to all be there, but we only had to control. But essentially what has happened is that the inputs, as recommended even by the experts, Institute of Agricultural Research, is what was basically flagged off, including improved seedlings for planting. So we're hoping that by the close of this month, we would have significantly distributed these inputs to farmers. As it stands, we are targeting a minimum of 100,000 farmers. And we have farmers that are yet to be validated through the CBN process. It's ongoing, and I think this week we should have them cleared.
Where were you before the CBN came in?
Well, before the CBN came in, to be honest, we were nowhere, to be honest. When I say nowhere, okay, yes, we had, our association was existing, but non-functional, so to speak. We had farmers, okay, we have farmers. At the time I came on board, which was getting close to about 4 years now. We had about 67,000 farmers in our database. But we couldn't really get anything going because we couldn't access, funding for our farmers. We couldn't get access to improved seedlings. We couldn't, in fact, we just couldn't do anything, to be honest.
Okay, all right. In the course of this discussion, we'll go back to the issue of cotton, production, because that is the hallmark of textile industry. Let's go to Kano via Skype, where we have Seydou Datido Adama. Seydou, once again, we're glad to have you this morning. And you are one person and more who have remained in business, despite the downturn in that sector. So let us have a feel of how your business is doing with respect to the fact that, of course, you have sustained the business for a long time. And we also like to know how what the Central Bank of Nigeria is, bringing in will assist you, in expanding your horizon in the sector.
Inviting the right team to discuss this issue. May I once again
Well, we are having issues with line of communication from Kano via Skype. Well, we will try and see where that can be restored in due course, and we'll then return to Datido Adama there in Kano. Now, let's return to Abuja once more and go back to Issa Aremu. Issa Aremu, now that there is an intervention, how will farmers, cotton farmers particularly, benefit from this? What I mean here is that a situation could arise where funds are made available, but accessibility, becomes difficult. Nigeria is well known to have producing cotton at a very low level. You can't compare ourselves to Burkina Faso, for instance, which is said to be the #1 in Africa for now. Right. So how would this benefit farmers? And how would they access it?
Well, I think development financing can talk better on that because they are the one pushing this policy, but they must benefit. I mean, because as you said, without cotton production, you can't talk of ginnery, you can't talk of spinning or even weaving into fabrics. So cotton production is primary, and the cotton producer should be at the center of it all. As I said, it's quite exciting now that the concerns of the farmers in terms of having access to seedlings, inputs, chemicals, CBN is taking it up, and above all, financing. And it's not so much what is important about the financing of CBN is the fact that it's long-term. That's very, very important, not short-term, because production of cotton requires some long-term effort. Then secondly, is the fact that the cost of it and CBN intervention is talking of single digit, within the context of anchor borrowing. So I think it's extremely very, very important that accessibility is addressed. I'm raising this point because, of course, we've had some 1 or 2 interventions in the past before too, and there are a lot of bottlenecks in terms of accessibility. But what makes this very, very significant is that CBN is walking the talk in a direction. I mean, bringing such large number of farmers. It's not that in their name, but with them. And of course, many could have also come, and that's the beauty of what's being the complementing monetary policy with some direct fiscal intervention, extremely very, very significant. So it is not left for CBN to make sure that, especially now we're having the production season now, planting season for 2019. I hope the other input that will be made available will be ready now, because this is the time for replanting, and I'm very sure Cotton Association President is here, will be able to tell us some of those details. But what I'm seeing here is that it will not be over until the cotton farmers are truly empowered to encourage production. And as you said, it's a scandal that small countries like Burkina Faso produce more cotton than us. I've given you history before that used to be cotton production destination. In fact, we're even exporting at a point. Not only the quality of production of the cotton that we're having, because that also has implication for what we produce. If they are contaminated, it has implication for the quality of fabrics that you produce. So I'm saying here in summary that it's better that the CBN, just exactly how the CBN governor has given the leadership, all the other desk officers that we see to must make sure that those inputs are made available, financing is made available, and to real cotton producers. I'm talking of farmers, not their agents or people who work on their behalf. Because at the end of the day, it will be nice that we build self-sufficiency in cotton production for the existing factories, so that they can produce and also reopen those who have closed down. Yeah.
All right, Comrade Isaremo, thank you very much. I want to return to Anebe Achimugu. What is your association's understanding of the current intervention by the CBN? Because I asked this question earlier. I said, look, where were you? You said you were nowhere, and suddenly manna is falling from heaven now, and is this likely to get your members out of the doldrums, considering a number of factors that you also have to have at your own end? Comrade Isaremo reminded us that, look, in the past we used to have cotton board, Nigerian cotton board. What marketing that will be at the end of it all? Who are your members? In which states of the Federation are you having your members benefit from all of this? And what acreage or hectareage is being cultivated? What is it CBN is doing this one? What relationship are you having with local governments and state governments?
Okay, thank you. I think, like I said earlier, the intervention is a welcome one for us. What is happening at the moment is that we have currently 24 states that have been cleared, because it's a process. It's a loan, okay, to individual farmers. So what we do as an association is to gather our farmers and send their names to the CBN. And CBN is working with the associations, particularly like NACOTAN, to ensure that they are dealing with the right farmers, real farmers. So we send the names of our farmers to the Central Bank of Nigeria. And what they do at that point is to clear them to ensure that they are not perhaps participating in another intervention program under the Anchor Borrowers program, or they are not exposed, owing and they have not paid, and so on and so forth. Now that cleared number of farmers will now be sent back to DFOs, who will now also verify and confirm that these are their farmers in this location. At that point, they now qualify for the loan. We have sat down and we have developed what we call economics of production, which is cost of production per hectare. That cost of production is basically the loan that is given to the farmer. Now, that loan also is not cash. It is in inputs. So we have identified the right type of inputs, the quantities that have been recommended for production per hectare of cotton. And that is what we are now going to distribute to our farmers. Like I said earlier, so far we have cleared about 70,879 farmers. That process, through this process, we are targeting a minimum of 100,000 farmers. And I know that the number of farmers or the list that we still have with the central bank to be cleared would take us way above the 100,000.
Okay.
Kieran, I'm sorry. I mean, if I express some concern as to the explanation provided by Chimugu, I'm not quite clear as to what, are we resorting to the same back-breaking labor that we have had in the past? Or, you know, there are other issues. You say you're having 100,000 farmers in 24 states. You want to cultivate so much hectare from what Mr. Budashiru Olaiton said earlier. What are these inputs that farmers are getting? And this is the first season. How sustainable is what you intend to do going forward?
Thank you very much. You see, what we've been able to do, we've put a structure and a process. What I mean by that is that we ensure that all the necessary leakages are being blocked. Like the President mentioned, the starting point is to identify the farmer, which the association is doing, mobilization. Thereafter, we will now do the biometric. We engage service provider who will map the farmer to the actual farms to be sure that they are real farmers. And in the course of cultivating an hectare, the EOP, we ensure that all the requirements, like the tractor, mechanization, are part of the cost, which is going to be a loan to the farmer. Like he said, we are not giving them cash, but really it's services, supply of inputs, herbicides, insecticides, and also service like mechanization. So because what we are looking at is that we want to ensure that all the agronomic practices are done. Because we are also engaging with IAR, Institute of Agricultural Research, and all the relevant institutes to ensure that the best practices are put in place and to make farming a business and a worthwhile experience for the farmers. Presently, we, like he said, we have about 100,000 being mapped and it's ongoing. And what is a revolving facility, is a loan. As they repay, they get more. So that's the whole essence of making it why it's going to be sustainable like the SY program. And aside from that, you mentioned the issue of marketing. You know, we are addressing the value chain, like I mentioned, from the genius who are going to offtake from the farmers. We are also supporting the genius to overhaul their machinery, to buy new equipments, modern day technology that will increase productivity. Aside from that, we are working with the spinners, we are working with the textile industries. So it's a value chain approach. That now the issue of producing and not selling is no more there. What we can now be targeting now is to see how we can even produce beyond the requirements of the Nigerian CTG industry so that we can now continue to export that as we used to do before.
All right, thank you. Let's return to Komodisa Aramu, whom we understand may be leaving us in a moment. Now, the intervention of the central bank is primarily, you know, to, of course, pull the nation's cotton and garment industry, you know, out of the string of neglect, you know, by administrations in the past. What is the assurance that this intervention is going to yield positive results? In your understanding, as a leader in the textile industry, what is the guarantee? Are your men prepared, you know, to key into this intervention mechanism as provided by the Central Bank of Nigeria? And what kind of collaboration would you expect, you know, from your constituency, you know, vis-a-vis the other stakeholders involved in the entire value chain?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the real critical question. But what we're excited about is that we're not just talking of the cotton production. We're talking of the entire value chains. And I think we've been meeting, and it's important to appreciate that the discussion is within the cotton textile garment policy, the CTG, so because it's completely holistic. But we have been pushing to say there should be proper performance criteria, because it's not over until we run through the value chains. I mean, we will be excited until the existing factories return back to full production. Most of them produce less than capacity now because of lack of input, electricity, all the sundry problem of smuggling. The largest textile mill that we have in Nigeria, I mean, that used to be employ close to 15,000 direct jobs. We NTA in Kaduna. They employ just about less than 2,000 now. Both in Ikorodu and of course in Kaduna. They've had a series of downsizing and retrenchment for a couple of issues, including lack of raw materials and of course lack of market to sell. So the best way to judge the impact of this intervention will be until these factories, first the existing ones, improve on capacity utilization, the new ones, those that are closed down, return back to open. And I'm happy to see Mr. Chimugu as the president of Cotton. You need to give his proper profile. I mean, there was once in Nigeria in which his father, may so rest in peace, he was one of the key pioneer Nigerian entrepreneur in textile, Ariwa Textile, that was employed close to 6,000 direct jobs. He was one of the few Nigerians that competed with the Chinese and the Indians and Japanese in that sector. And textile, I mean, if that's where Comrade Adams Oshomole worked, but I'm talking to you now, that factory is under lock and key. So his activism within the Cotton Association will not be over until that factory reopens, because that's where they go. And I think that's what the CBN looks forward to. But I also want to add quickly.
While you are still on this value chain and getting the textile segment of the value chain to function, there were reports, particularly in the 90s and up until some years ago, of asset stripping of some of those factories, some of those very well-known factories. It was reported that some persons, particularly from Asia, had stripped those machines and sent them abroad as scraps, which they then used, of course, in setting up new factories from where we are now getting our imports. Let's say that, look, assuming we get every other thing right, the cotton, the farmers come with their produce, we get into the granaries and then the spinners, do we have the factories? Or that will be another round of huge investment.
Yeah, no, definitely we just must have factories. I mean, that's the way to go. We need to add value to cotton. And even the cotton production we are talking of, I was just looking at the statistics yesterday. The entire world produced close to about 123 million bales of cotton. In fact, somebody says that if you arrange the bales vertically, that's like the biblical tower of Babel. And the entire bales could cover the globe almost twice. So what I'm saying is that, I mean, the world produced cotton in abundance. So it's like starting from ground zero. In fact, the entire first industrial revolution was propelled by cotton production. 1.0, the world is talking of fourth industrial revolution. I think, but this is all we need to produce textile, and we're very fashionable people. I mean, all of us say there's nothing that is not cotton-based. So this is the time for us to get going, to get it done. But talking about the point you raised about asset stripping, I think that's even more the case in some of the publicly owned textile mills. I mean, like Kaduna Textile, which used to be owned by the northern government, the regional government. I mean, a whole premier could manage that factory better. But now we have 19 governors. The more you see, the less you. And that's the point I think it was you who raised it, Kesley, that, this partnership is not just federal, the states. In any case, the factories are in the states. So we need to see more activism on the part of the state. I was impressed that Governor Mesari was there, but all governors should have been there of the 24 states, because they are the one who will, realize the vision of CBN within that context, make sure that we get the farmers organized, give them the input, address the issue of off-takers, so that there won't be case of the produce, they can't have the outlet for it, So I want to use this medium to say all the governor-elects, especially in this 31st state, must be on duty. You know, I was also involved in this process, and it's one of the issues that we raised. Let me tell you, it's the lowest hanging fruit that we can employ thousands of our youths. I mean, I was just listening to your news beat this morning. It was the, placement for customs job. See the number of the applicants that have come in. Textile industry, along the entire value chain can absorb this. I mean, and I'm happy that you are making farming now prestigious. You know, I mean, with this intervention of CBN, not only that, to be a spinner, to be a weaver, should be something that is meant for graduates. I mean, the entire Polytechnic in Kaduna was, many departments were set up to feed the textile industry. People are having PhD in textile production. I mean, so it's what we can get done. So what is at stake is the need to inflate Nigeria economy. I mean, even in the organized labor. Why did we produce Comrade Adams as the president of NSC? You know, right from inception, NSC came into being 1978. We used to have the largest number of members in the NSC. I mean, highest number of delegates, but the last delegate conference, the most you see, the less you. So what I'm saying here is that it's what has been done before, and we must get it done. And I'm happy that exactly what South Africa has done. Would they face similar challenge? Chinese invasion, smuggling, but once the government intervened, they now partner with Chinese rather than importing. Come here to produce. And I'm happy we are talking of industrial parks now. But you can't have industrial park without industrial input, which is the cotton.
All right.
So, and I think now that we're getting good, so we shouldn't leave this job to the federal law. State government must be on duty. And I was excited last time when Governor Rufai is not talking of textile production. He has done industrial, what do you call it, summit. This is the fourth one. And let's focus on textile. We talk of Olam, fertilizer, feed, you know, those jobs are not even sustainable. The sustainable jobs are the industries. Spinner, weaver, they can acquire skill. They can also set up their own.
All right. All right.
So I think this is the way to really go.
That's an interesting analysis. You know, you have put out coming from the question that put to you by Kingsley. It's very apt that this sector must grow. Now the CBN has come in, let's see what happens. But to thank you for your analysis. Well, we're not surprised that we've spoken because, of course, the General Secretary of the National Union of Garment and Textile Workers of Nigeria.
He's also president of Industrial Global Union.
Global Union.
Yes, and yes.
Okay, well, let's hope that Nigeria will be one day industrialized.
Reindustrialized. We once
were.
4% or 25% of GDP.
Exactly.
Now, less than 4%. We can do it again, and we must get it done. Yes.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We have been looking at the cotton and the garment industry sector. For now, let's take a short break. When we come back, the conversation continues.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, we still have our guest with us. We're still, of course, trying to get the connection via Skype to our guest in Kano to give us the industry perspective. He, of course, being the chairman of Adama Textiles Industries. And but let's return to Mudashiru Olaitan, who is Director of Development Finance. There's excitement about what the CBN is doing, but sustainability is an issue, and indeed linkages. I don't know how much of a role the CBN is going to play in all of this. You are putting out the development finance. One question that arises, where are the merchant banks?
Thank you very much. The whole process that the Central Bank, under the Anchor Borrowers Program, we are working with the banks. We have what we call PFI, Participating Financial Institutions, because absolutely the Central Bank cannot disburse directly to individuals. So all the programs we are doing, all the interventions, you have a bank behind it. Like for the cotton program, we have the financial institution that we are disbursing the facility through them, because it's a synergy between the stakeholders, the central bank, the financial institutions. And when I say stakeholders, including the cotton, the generalists and everything. So what we have been able to put in place now, we now have a better processes. Before, farmers are just giving credit and all what have you. But now, before you can get any credit, you must provide your BVN, because it's part of the Central Bank Financial Inclusion Policy to ensure that there is availability of credit to a large number of entrepreneurs. So before you can even access, you must have a BVN. The implication of that is that you must have your bank. So the banks are solidly, the bankers committee are solidly supporting the programs. So that's what we have been able to put in place. And under the Anchor Borrowers Program, we've done over 1 million farmers. The implication of that is that farmers that are not readily having access to financial services, doesn't even know how the banks works. Now they can now access facilities through the banks. And the sustainability is in the sense that if they fully repay, they get another facility. So we are also cementing the banking relationship and developing the banking culture among the rural populace in the rural economy.
What are the others, Kirian? This is the financing aspect. Okay, you are able to eliminate political farmers so that the real farmers, and the association are the ones who access all of this. But getting to utilize the money and having to deal with your produce off-takers, is it the CBN's responsibility to also manage off-takers? That is the role of marketing. So what is being put in place, or who are the other stakeholders that are coming in now to fill that gap of marketing? And insurance, is NISRAL also involved in all of this, agricultural insurance, so that if there is any catastrophe or any act of God that ruins or wrecks their produce, what happens? That is the second one. Third point, as Issa Aremu said before we signed him off a moment ago, you must be sure of the quality of the cotton that you are producing. Otherwise, it will impact on the quality of the garment or the textile that you have eventually. Where are the extension workers? Is it the central bank that will also be deploying extension workers? You talked about agricultural institutes. Their own level is different. That's why I asked earlier about the states and local governments. Where are all of this to ensure that at the end of the day, the money you put down actually germinates and grows this sector?
Thank you very much. For marketing, we have the various, you see, when cotton is produced, there has to be a general who we offtake. So what the Central Bank is doing, as they produce, we are also supporting generally to overhaul their machineries, buy new equipment where necessary. Then aside from that, part of the EOP, which the Nakuta president will handle, there is also the cost of extension services that's also part of all this. So, and the Central Bank has gone further, like the management did. We are ensuring that also the issue of smuggling that was raised by Comrade Saremu, that also we are working with the customs, because smuggling is also a bit that has affected the present, that brought the textile industry to the present situation. So we are working with the customs to ensure that smuggling is eradicated. And the Central Bank has also gone further to ensure that those identified as smugglers of textiles have been put on PND, post no debit. And the implication of that is that they cannot have access to money to finance their smuggling business. So with all this, we are ensuring that over time, all the issues affecting the CTG value chain will be addressed.
Okay, thank you. The issue of cotton in terms of quality has been a concern to this country since we went down in terms of the level of cotton production in Nigeria for many years now. Tell us about the quality of cotton available in Nigeria, because as Isaremu also echoed, that it is important to have quality cotton which will determine the quality of garments that are going to get at the long last. So we've mentioned that Burkina Faso is ahead of us and of course ahead of other African countries in terms of cotton production. So what will the CBN intervention do in this respect? And we'd like you also to let us know the source of your seeds and seedlings for cotton production.
Okay, thank you. I think first and foremost, the intervention, once again, I think it will give us some traction. Traction in the sense that in terms of production, we expect that we'll be seeing significant improvement in production, generally speaking. Now, for the first time in a long time, let me say that the inputs, the recommended inputs, the exact quantities, the exact compositions will be given to the farmers to farm. So that's why we're expecting that from an average, honestly, of about 400 kg to 500 kg per hectare, that we now can hit. Because, you know, this is a loan. So we have done it very conservatively to say that even at 1.5 metric tons achievement, the farmer is able to pay back his loan. But like we have said, the seedlings, when you mentioned the seedlings that have been identified through our effort of CBN, is going to give us upwards of 4 tons. That is if good agricultural practices are adhered to by the farmer. And part of what the EOP also will do is to provide farming and training to our farmers so that they know exactly what they need to do, considering climate change and so on and so forth. So with that, we have also speaking to quality, because quality stems or starts from the input or the initial input, which is the seed. If you have good quality seed and you handle your farm properly, you are likely to get good quality cotton fiber. Now, with that, part of the problem that Nigeria has also been experiencing as per quality is polypropylene contamination, which is typically the use of Baco Super Sack. Sorry, I'm mentioning the name of the company, but it's the actual product I'm talking about. So what we're doing through this intervention is to provide cotton harvest bags to farmers. Now, with that, you are eliminating the polypropylene, and you are addressing, of course, the quality directly. And along the line, with the discussion that is going to be held with GINAs, which I hear is going to be before the end of this month, the GINAs also will now not be using polypropylene wrappers for their bills. So they are introducing also better packaging materials to handle that. So in terms of quality, I think that one is the right step in the right direction, and we will get there at that point, at the point of export or at the point of even local consumption by our textile mills.
Where are you getting your bags from? Because I recall that that's the bag for packing this. Yeah. On Good Morning Nigeria, a couple of years ago, we had a director of Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development who came and he was talking about the kinds of bags that can be produced locally. In fact, he made a demonstration. Some of those bags much better than the jute bags, I believe. That's the one, the jute bags, and these ones are biodegradable and healthy. So, but where are you sourcing your bags from this time? Are you in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture?
Well, first and foremost, we have taken the cue from the Ministry of Agriculture, because in the past, the Ministry of Agriculture had invested in ensuring that our farmers replace polypropylene bags with cotton harvest bags. Now, the good thing about this intervention, this Ankoburas program, And the sustainability aspect you are talking about is that already we have brought in even the textile mills already. They are the ones that are now producing these bags for us. So they will produce the fabric, that's the textile industries, for instance, like Funtua Textile in Funtua, Katsina State. They will produce the fabrics and make it available to garment industries in existence, who will now stitch the bags for us for distribution to our farmers. So that's where we're sourcing our bags from. And this is cotton produced in Nigeria and made in Nigeria.
Now, back to cotton again, Kingsley. Sorry, back to the cotton once more, the production once more. Are you considering genetically modified cotton seeds and seedlings? Because that is part of what Burkina Faso is doing at the moment, that made them to be #1.
Yes, actually, it's a consideration. It's a process. I'm glad to say that the federal government has approved the commercialization of BT cotton through the National Biotechnology Development Agency. And they worked in collaboration with the IAR. They brought in about, they have tested about 4 varieties. But out of the 4 that they've tested, they've actually zeroed in on 2. Now, this season, as we go into this season, those seeds are going to be made available to about 1,000 farmers. Just, it's not controlled anymore, so to speak. The farmers are now given the seed, plant as usual. Of course, they'll be told how to plant, how to space, and so on and so forth. So with that, we expect that the result of that will lead to larger quantities of the seed being made available to our farmers going forward.
I'm wondering, because there were concerns raised about GMOs, and indeed the cotton being produced in Burkina Faso through GMOs. On Good Morning Nigeria, we've had the conversation around GMOs and why the government is reluctant, to give the go-ahead through the Biotech Institute or agency that is responsible for that. Are we now saying that it is GMOs that GMO seeds that are being distributed to farmers, to boost our cotton industry? And are we ready for the consequences?
No, I think from what he said, is that it's part of, GMO is part of it, but not just...
no, GMO is a major agricultural policy about which the Nigerian government had been reluctant to give the go-ahead through the Biotech Agency.
As at last year, June last year, that approval was given by the federal government.
For the cotton industry?
For BT cotton. Okay.
What do you mean by BT cotton? That's what I'm saying. Are we also ready for the consequences?
Well, I mean, I wonder what the consequences of GMO are, except you ask me directly. But I used to be one in doubt of GMO technology. But if you look at everywhere else that GMO has been used so far, there's no scientific evidence of it having any adverse effect to the environment, to the farmer, or even to the food value chain. So, but in Burkina Faso, I remember also the story about Burkina Faso. What happened in that instance was that there was a rush to introduce BT cotton to Burkina Faso. And in that process, they missed out introgression into their existing varieties. And then the farmers mistakenly thought that, it's a magic wand. They don't need to apply the fertilizers, the good agricultural practices, that go with it. And that was what affected it. Today, as I speak to you, Burkina Faso is calling back for GMO introduction or a return of GMO into their cotton chain.
That was the aspect, because there were concerns raised about the fact that they had made GMO was introduced, gladly accepted in Burkina Faso, and then they found a drop in their production. There were all kinds of issues.
I've actually had a course, to run a documentary on GMO for several years now. The thing is that it's a process, and it has a mechanism. You just have to follow it. Any error, could result to what you are talking about. But that does not mean that it should not be used. As a matter of fact, it has been proven that without GMO, the world cannot feed itself from the way things are currently.
That was what was said, under the Malthusian theory, of economics. Why did the Zambians reject GMO food? Zambians.
And today, are they better off in terms of food?
No, they are not having deal with just a GMO food. Anyway, but that's
let's return to you because there's a question put to you a short while ago that has to do with ensuring that the money you put in, is going to be properly accounted for, by way of, getting the right farmers, by way of the right farmers doing the right thing to be able to pay back after all said and done. So what are the monitoring mechanisms that we put in place, to see how the entire process, could go seamlessly?
Okay, thank you very much. Part of the monitoring includes, first we have branches in all the states of the Federation, where we have a DFO, Development Finance Office, and they are responsible for monitoring of the farmers because, like the President mentioned, they are the ones that even screen the farmers before they are finally funded. In addition to that, also the NACOTAN, the association also have their own monitoring team. Like Kingsley also mentioned the other time about the extension services. Part of the EOP includes the cost for extension services. So we are now monitoring at 3 levels: the Commodity Association, the CBN, and also the extension agents. So all these are put in place to ensure that the farmers are well guided in terms of good agronomic practices, and also the feed inspection and feed visits also try to identify warning signs so that we can quickly address the issues.
All right, just before we continue with our guests, unfortunately our engineers are still having challenges getting across Skype connection from Kano. It's unfortunate we are not able to continue with Seidu Adama. But there have been some tweets that have come in, and we'll go through those tweets very quickly. This is coming from Dele Jack Solomon. It says the Nigerian cotton, textile, and garment policy is a laudable effort. However, the policy hasn't served the yearnings for the revitalization of the textile industry in Nigeria. The holistic revival of the textile industry will yield a boost to the agenda on diversification.
All right, from Badamasi Adamu, he says the government of President Buhari in the second term, as a matter of urgency, must devote her attention more on the areas if really we don't want to drink crude oil one day, as the world is looking for alternative to oil.
Now, Chris Simeon says it's a pity that Nigeria's textile industry has collapsed. The government should act faster now by revitalizing that sector for the purpose of boosting the economy.
And Festus Akimbe, well, sadly, we have not gained from the 2015 National Policy on Cotton, Textile and Garments Policy, as none of the targets set in the policy has been met. There is urgent need for investment in our textile mills if we are truly interested in sewing our textile industry back together.
Ashiru Mohammed tweets, now, while the vision to see the springing up of industries in the CTG, that's the cotton, textile and garment, is desirable, it will remain an illusion insofar as we do not fix the major component required to drive this development, which is power. Without stable power, no real transformation is possible.
All right, from Mike Anyakwo, where are our textile industries? Where are thousands of workers of the textile industries that lost their jobs? Where are various contractors and vendors that hitherto earned living from the industry? Government must do the needful to bring life to this subsector that used to be the greatest employer of labor in the country. This should be a task that must be done for the interest and overall welfare of people of our dear country, Nigeria.
Law Alpha said, now the policy, if strictly implemented, would improve local production, and patronage both internally and externally would rise to ensuring employment for the population.
Osaze Nehizena, for the industry to work, there should be electricity 24/7 because the industry can take care of unemployment in the country.
Joseph, that's the Twitter handle, it says, please, what happened to the textile industries, especially the one at Edo-Ekiti? We need to fix it for the purposes of our unemployed youth. What happened to it is what we've been discussing.
I think Nigerians are beginning to talk now that the government is becoming interested. We've had government over the years that ignored this subject. Now, are your men ready? Are you ready for this?
Kirian, I just wondering, because the issue of power has been raised, there's also the fiscal side to this. And, of course, CBN deals with monetary policy, but sometimes you find an intrusion into the fiscal arena. Look, we can do all of these things that we want to do. If smuggling persists, we're in trouble. The CBN has said, look, we will not give you money, to import textile, X, Y, Z. But persons, who want to launder funds, can use all kinds of means to get these textiles in. What is the CBN doing with the fiscal authorities to ensure that we deal with smuggled textiles as much as possible? The most embarrassing thing is when you go, the materials are not hidden. No. They are not hoarded. They are on full display. You see them in glass cabinets, glitzy shops, and they will tell you that this one is imported. You know where they are, and yet everyone is saying, no, that's what we can do.
And Kingsley, to add to that question, if you go to the streets of Kano in Lagos, you find foreigners, especially Chinese people, selling retailing, garments. And so if you ban, fine and good, as Kingsley said, if you ban, fine and good, but then the smugglers are working and the goods are displayed. So what is the Senator going to do?
Thank you very much. Let me start first. The federal government has actually set up a committee to overhaul the CTG industry, which includes the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Minister of Industry and Investment, Water Resources, and 5 state government, Kaduna, Kano, Katsina, Zamfara, and Gombe. Then, in addition to that, there are also clusters being established across the country to address the issue of power, so that with the clusters, the CTG can operate there without fear of whether there will be no power or no light. In addition to that, the Central Bank is also supporting those states. Like in Kano State, we are supporting the government to establish their own power projects, and the project is almost concluded. We have the Tiga Dams project, and in Kaduna too, the same thing is happening. So all these are happening across the states where the CTG are more prominent. In addition to that, again, we are also working with the customs to address the issue of smuggling. What the governor has directed that we need to see how we can investigate those that are involved in the smuggling. And that's why the governor has directed that those fund wanting will not be allowed to, the banks will not be allowed to post any credit debit into their account. So this indirectly is going to really hamstring them to the extent that they will not be able to operate to kill our textile industry. And in addition to that, what we are looking on longer term is that when there is increased production, the industries are coming up at having access to credit at single-digit rate, then you can see that gradually the Nigerian CTG will be more globally competitive. Because the experience I've been so far is that even the cost of credit has been a challenge. But what the Central Bank is doing now is going to bring down the cost of operation, and particularly from the cost of credit. So over time, we can now see that we'll be more competitive, and now we now have more of our own local production, because if there is increase in supply, then prices will come down. Because usually, if you look at Nigerian textile material, it's far better, especially this one that comes from China, because they are more like synthetic than the real cotton. So with this,
but fine. When you're dealing with dumping and smuggling, this model you are describing now obviously will fall apart. So how are we planning? I know that that's not the full responsibility of the central bank. Yeah, but what is the government going to do with this aspect? Dumping, you say you will reduce interest rate to single digit. Those who want to dump, of course, they will be heavily subsidized, and then dump and kill your economy. Those who are laundering money, all right, go and smuggle textiles, and before you know it, the factories the factories begin to close up again.
Because this is part of what happened in the past. That was why I asked Issa Aremi, for him to raise what were the factors that led us to where we are in the textile sector for now. But I think that's not only the responsibility of Central Bank of Nigeria. That's right. That's a broader perspective.
Are you concerned about this regardless?
No, we are really concerned because, again, if the interventions, the objective will not be realized, if smuggling is still thriving. And that's why the Central Bank is going to extra mile to ensure that, first, the accounts are blocked. Secondly, we are now working with the relevant government agencies like customs. We have collaborative engagements on how to ensure that the issue of smuggling.
Yeah. No, all right. your final thoughts on this? Are your men prepared? There is a window of opportunity, coming to this sector, and your men, I'm sure, are prepared. So what should we be expecting?
Well, we are prepared, I'll say that, from the perspective of the farmers. In fact, from the flag off that we conducted in Katsina, we have seen that there are more interested farmers, groups coming, showing interest in joining this program for cotton production. And then I can speak confidently about also the ginners, because actually I'm a ginner. Before I became president of the Cotton Association of Nigeria, I was running a ginning company. I'm still running a ginning company, by the way. And, for us, for the ginning sector, for instance, if you don't have raw cotton to process, there's nothing you can do. You can't convert your equipment to any other thing but to process cotton. So with what the central bank is doing, like I said, is a holistic approach. So first and foremost, you ensure sustainable cotton production. And secondly, you are mapping the ginners to the farmers, or to where the cotton production is. So we will have the feedstock that we need with the consideration of quality and so on and so forth. And then they are now talking to the textile companies as well to come and offtake from us, and then the garments and so on. So it's a holistic. We're all very excited. We are ready. For years, we've been complaining and, faced with the challenges. But for the first time, I think that this administration, the CBN intervention, is addressing directly all these challenges. And we believe that, for instance, we have said that in cotton production in itself, worst case scenario, we are seeing almost 50 to 60% improvement in cotton production, or what will be produced this season, coming November, December, when harvest commences.
All right, that's fair enough. Now, the power sector, of course, is one issue that will continue to linger. But the clusters that you are having, I didn't hear you mention Lagos, because we have seen over the years the introduction of gas-fired power services. That should be very helpful. Yes. That's one leg. Second leg, the policy that allows heavy industries to get power directly from GENCOs, it's also one that is available. Yeah. I think that all of those ones will be explored. But we'll look forward to evaluating this in the years ahead. As
one more thing is that...
Very briefly.
Briefly. I think the best thing that has actually happened to this economy is the reappointment of the governor of Central Bank. Because we...
Are you a politician?
No, I'm not. What I'm saying so is that we have about 9 commodities. Cotton is one of them. Yeah. Because the governor directed that we should look at those commodities that we are importing, that we have a potential to produce. And those include tomato. You are aware of what we've done in rice. We've reached a plateau. We are looking at fish. We are looking at oil palm. All those things, like in the history of oil palm, we used to be the major exporter, but now we're importing. So we are now looking at 9 commodities. We have created teams, champions, who will address them holistically, just like what we are doing.
As you have mentioned that one, we hope you are also aware that rice farmers have been complaining about smuggling of rice into the economy.
But this is said and done. I think Central Bank is making a bold step this time around. That has to be established.
Well, it's beating his chest. That's how that's all right, Mudashiru Olaito, Director of Development Finance at the Central Bank of Nigeria, I would like to thank you for being part of our discussion this morning.
You're welcome.
We also would like to appreciate Anibe Achimugo, who is President, National Cotton Association of Nigeria. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Nigeria. Okay, now let's go over to our sports desk.
Defensive stalwart Onomeibi midfield